pre announcement. Give people a chance to gather.
Gather or flee. Depends on how you feel about it.
Is that Shakespeare?
Oh. Yeah, there we go.
Is that a quote from Shakespeare? I don't know. I don't know that one. Well, hello. We're just getting ready, getting our set up here for a very special interview with Ron Bacon. This is part 2. We did part 1. Can you believe it?
In case you missed part 1.
In case you missed part 1, we might repeat a few of the stories because they're such great stories. I don't mind hearing them again myself. But we do have them recorded, and they are available on the YouTube channel Sandner Music. And also, it's still posted on Facebook. And
we do carry on when we the interview goes on forever.
Yeah, it was quite an extensive interview. It went on for over 2 hours. Did you know that?
Well, I even had time to take a nap while we were doing it.
During the interview?
I actually watched it again, and I thought, gee, it moved along pretty well. I mean, it really wasn't boring. It held my interest. Now, of course, I'm looking at myself, but still, it was pretty. I thought it was a good interview. I mean, you're excellent.
Oh, thank you. I just let my curiosity be my guide. I'm going to ask Summer one more time if the audio sounds okay so far.
Yes, it sounds very good. And you're live now, right?
We are live, yes.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah.
Catch me while I'm live, folks. It could go any minute.
Is that Shakespeare too?
Yeah, right.
And if we were on live television, we would be starting right on the second. So it's 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the interview with Ron Bacon, and he's used to that countdown because you guys, now in the early days of live TV, did you guys do things right to the second? I mean, once that 210 came, you're on the air, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything was to the second. I mean, that was the whole deal. Was everything had to be exactly on time, always.
You couldn't,
and it took a lot of skill to do that. Especially when when some of the elements of the show aren't that much under your control. Like when I would do various shows, I'm thinking of award show. There was one country music show where the star from one of the country stars, they had some alcohol, I guess, on the set somewhere. he got smashed, and he came on, and he was supposed to do his thing, his song, and then 30 seconds of saying how wonderful everything was, and then he went on for another 15 minutes, and we had no control over it.
Oh my goodness!
It caused a huge problem for the show because in those days, things had to be exactly on time. I had to get the show off on time. I couldn't get in touch with the producer, didn't know what pages to throw out. And I had to toss out Marty Pacetta's famous, wonderful dance number with the steam he had spent hours on. It was not a great thing for the show. Anyway, maybe we talked about that before. I'm not sure. But
no, I don't. But we might have. But
Marty had rehearsed this show, this particular dance number, because he thought that was the best thing that ever happened. He loved the steam and all that they had, and so there was this. The set had a lot of steam emitting from various pipes and things, and the dancers were imitating a lot of this, and it was a really big deal. And I had to throw it out while we were doing the show because it
was that the Lawrence Welk Show?
That was a country music award. It was a CMA, one of the very first. I think it was maybe the first CMA or one of the very first. But I did all the award shows. I did country music awards, but I also did Academy Awards and all the award shows. I mean, there were so many of them. Dick Clark had some award shows that he did.
Well, we're going to talk about Dick Clark in more. We almost missed talking about him in the part one of the interview, but just so people know, this is Ron Bacon. He lives in Sedona, Arizona. He's been a friend of mine for at least 10 years or so. He's started out in live television back in the 50s as a producer and a director and just a man at large in media, and also as a writer. And he's produced films, he's produced live musicals, and he's branched out into many creative endeavors since then, and we're going to be talking about that. But one of his mainstays was with the Lawrence Welk Show. I think that's fascinating that Lawrence Welk Show was the number one show back in the late 50s. And and you were working on the show at the time, and you got to be very good friends with Lawrence Welk, if I remember.
It's interesting that's where I actually started at the top, you know. I mean, when I got my first job in television, in network television, I'd been working on local before that. When I got my first job in network television, wasn't very long before. I think I was assigned to the Lawrence Welk immediately. Actually, I only had my first job was just at the very end of the show. I had to cue the announcer to say goodbye, but that was the beginning of it. And then
there you are. I'm showing a picture on the screen of you with Lawrence Welk.
Yes, indeed.
Now, who's that hippie guy next to Lawrence Welk there? Is it with the beard?
That kind of puts you in the date in the 60s, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. That was a very interesting picture.
I was working on rock and roll shows too, so it worked out. But Lawrence was very tolerant of my appearance. His manager wasn't so happy about it, and he tried to get me to change my ways. Sam Lutz said, "Ron, you're ruining our image. You gotta get rid of that hair." And I said, "Sam, you're ruining mine." So,
well,
we had fun.
Now, when you worked on the, say, Academy Awards, isn't that a problem too, getting people off the stage because they want to thank 5,000 people and
well,
keep
that's
talking?
the biggest. That's the biggest issue. You know, I mean, they have to thank everybody in the whole world, and we, you know, it was always they were instructed that there would only be 30 seconds. And if they heard the music, play them off. They were supposed to leave. But sometimes their egos overcome the music. My job on many of the Academy Award shows later, I worked with Marty Passetta on a lot of shows, who produced an awful lot of them for television. And what my job on that, when I worked with Marty a lot, was I would work as a second director on some of his stuff, because we'd integrate various items into the show from other places. But the biggest job I had was to edit the show down to 55 minutes for the international audience. And
after the fact.
2 years ago, I was in Egypt, and somebody told this very wealthy store owner that I had produced the Academy Awards. Well, I was just second person on there, but my editing job, taking it to 55 minutes, that show went to billions of people, whereas the show that went live on the air went to 20 million or something. But I was famous all over the world because my credit. There were only 2 credits at the end of the show. Marty would just put his name and then my name, and that was it. And so people in all over Egypt recognized my name, and as one of the people doing the International Academy Award show, and so I was kind of famous over there, And the guy says, "Well, you could please come here and visit me." And I've got a 20-room house, all this stuff. I mean,
Nice.
it was interesting. I was so accepted, and I never expected to get fame when I went to Egypt. That was strange. But the Academy Awards was, we had so many people on that show. My goodness. I mean, and as the show became longer and longer, can you imagine having to take 3.5 hours and cut it down to 55 minutes? I mean, you got to throw out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's a tough decision to make.
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
That's what I would do.
did you have to work with the orchestra? I know the Academy Award Orchestra used to play live right on TV, and
That's right.
and they didn't know what
Everything was-
song they would have to play because they don't know what film is going to win. So they would
Yeah.
they would have to have like 5 different arrangements ready, and then the conductor had to be really on the ball. Who was the conductor at the time?
Well, they had just Johnny Green. I mean, they were
He's a legend.
they were great conductors. There were people who were so famous, I mean, everything about the awards was class. It was done with such. I mean, we'd spend an entire year working just to get one show together. I
Wow.
mean, you didn't do that in a week. I mean, I would go to production meetings on that thing, and there were discussions about things and time and what, and they were working right up to the last minute on the script. I mean, they were making changes all the time, up with Joanne and on and on. There were always issues between some of the actors that had to be straightened out. I mean, if the dressing rooms between two people who hated each other were too close, they had to fix that.
Well, now
Silly things.
you were saying that the Academy Awards is one of the most viewed shows in the world with 1 billion people, and so it's one of the most probably most highly produced shows in quality. Did they have extra special cameras, and they had maybe extra cameras and
Well, we
stuff
had
like that?
we had a lot of cameras. I mean, it was. I mean, it
More
was
than
whatever
usual.
it took. Yeah. Although I have to go back to the very first Academy Awards, the show that I worked. The preceding year, I do write about this in this particular event in my blogs, which are on my website. If anybody's interested, ronbacon.net. I have a number of these blogs, and the one about this particular Academy Awards I'm going to tell you about. Yeah, all right.
There we go.
Big
That's-
advertisement. How much do I owe you for that one? So, on this very first Academy Awards at ABC, Academy Awards have been moved back and forth over the years. The Academy Awards went back to the 1930s or something. It was Academy Awards were probably born about the same time I was, And the thing that was interesting about this particular show was that it was the very first show that we had done on ABC. NBC had the show prior to us, but the preceding year, when Jerry Lewis was one of the MCs, or the MC, I think he was, major person there, and the live show, somehow they got off on time, and they were 20 minutes early. And so they had to fill the time because that's the way it was, And so they had Jerry Lewis ad-lib and play around for 20 minutes. Well, now Jerry Lewis, I mean, when he's working from a script, very funny man. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, he had a character, and it was written, and a lot of time was put into what he did. But when he had to ad lib, he was lost. Anybody would be. It's not easy to go out there in front of millions of audience and have nothing to talk about, you know. So he bounced around that stage doing things, and it was a terrible disaster. The smell still is on that stage till today. Well, immediately the awards were taken off NBC, and ABC got them. And I was assigned to that very first show. And the director, producer was Dick Dunlap, was a very well-known director. And so the very first day I'm out there on the stage and getting things organized, and this man comes over and introduces himself. He says, "I'm a business manager for the Academy." And he introduced himself, and I shook hands with him, and everything was nice. And then he said, "What is that thing over there?" And he pointed to our main camera, which was on a pedestal that could be raised to, had an arm on it and everything. The cameraman would sit on this thing, could get up about 12 or 15 feet high to look over everything. It was our main camera. And I said, "Well, that's our main camera. It'll take most of the shots of the show." And he said, "Well, you got to get rid of that." I said, "Well, you can't get rid of that." "Oh, no." He said, I command you to get rid of, because I was, and I said, "Your director's not going to want to do that." And he says, "Well, I command you to get that off the stage." And I said, "You don't command me to do anything. I command you to get off my stage before you get hurt."
Wow.
And I was livid, you know. And I don't know, I could mention his name. Maybe I won't, though, just to be kind.
We want to know.
Should I? I don't know. Should I? I don't know. I could.
Well, it's up to you.
I don't know. It'd be nice to not mention his name. So anyway, I don't think anything more about it, you know. And a little bit later, Sandy Cummings, who was the network program director for ABC, comes over. He says, "Ron," he says, "you got to talk to you." And he goes over in the audience there and plays it. He says, "Now you've insulted the head of the Academy, and you can't do that. You're fired.
You got fired the first show?"
Yeah, that's what he said, you know. And I said, okay, you know. So I started. I'm thinking,
packing up.
They can't. I have like a crew of 250 people working for me, and they're going to fire me. You know, really. So, but I get out and walk down the street, and I'm heading for my car, and all of a sudden Sandy comes waddling up after me. And he says, "Ron, wait a minute, come back." He says, I guess you aren't fired." And he said, the producer director, Dick Dunlap, said if I leave, he's leaving. He's not going to do the show either. So they had no shot.
So did they end up moving the camera?
No, they couldn't. Of course not. It just, this guy just overstepped his authority. I don't know what reason he would have for wanting to get rid of the camera. But whatever it was, I was not the person to be talking to in the first place. But he wanted to get rid of it. He needed to talk to the producer director. And when he said, "I command you," what the hell? That's
really kind of strange language.
I command you. You don't command me to do anything. Come on. But it all worked out. And it was a good show, and we had no problems. Everything worked out fine. But every year when I'd come on stage, this business manager would always be there. He'd kind of sneak away.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, but he was there for a lot of the Academy Awards. I did 30 years of Academy Awards, so that's a lot of shows. A lot of people, a lot of stuff.
Well, I think my
But
picture
we're going to talk
froze.
about Dick Clark.
We want to talk about Dick Clark. Is my picture frozen on your side? My picture is frozen.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're frozen there.
So,
I guess a little chilly up where you live. I don't know.
what causes that, in your professional opinion? I don't know.
Well, I imagine you could turn the air conditioning off.
Well,
It's kind of nice that I'm animated and you're sort of a puppet sitting there.
I'm just sort of like a voice kind of coming. Yeah, I think my audio is coming through though, right, Summer?
Yes,
Yeah.
your audio is fine, and it might, as long as your live video is working okay too, but
Okay.
yeah, but it's a nice picture of you. It's a nice frozen picture. It's not one of those wonky ones where
Yeah,
your
I don't
mouth
have
is.
my finger in my nose or something. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Dick Clark, for those youngsters out there who don't remember, was the MC of a very well-known show to people of my generation called American Bandstand. And this was a show where he, as the MC of the show, would play records, and there would be mostly teenage couples or possibly younger 20s would be dancing to the songs and the hits of the day, and he would also have musical guests who were sometimes very famous. And
If you were had a big hit, you're going to be on his show. I mean, that was he had all the big band, major artists on there, and they would just lip sync to whatever the recording was. But it was exciting having them there, and the kids, of course, loved it. But that show, it changed the history of the United States. I really think it was far more important than anybody realizes, because most adults hated rock and roll. They thought it was a terrible influence, and there was in those days there was a lot of prejudice in the United States against black people, and things were not, there were things that were not right. And what was interesting was we would have some black dancers on the show, and originally that kind of raised a few eyebrows around the place. And then when the black guys would start dancing with the white kids, or the black girls that danced with the white guys, that was almost explosive. And there were a number of years where that wouldn't have been tolerated. In fact, Dick would warn us if we saw a shot, like he said, "Don't take that picture." But that all changed, and eventually kids made those changes that we needed to bring ourselves together, under Martin Luther King's great guidance. And I have some things to say about that too. But Dick was more than just American Bandstand. I did most of them. I don't know how many I missed, but there weren't many. And the show was on for 27 years, so that's a long time. And they had an audience.
Were you there at the beginning?
Or so.
20 million. Were you there for some of the first shows that he did when he came from?
Yes, well, the ones that were on ABC. They started out in Philadelphia. Dick, his father owned some radio stations there, and he got a job working first one of his father's radio stations as in the mailroom, actually. And then he eventually became an announcer, and he went on from there. So he had an interesting background with a lot of support in the business. But he's a really good-looking guy, And I mean, he looked great. So when they had the show American Bandstand, at first it was not called that; it was a dance party or something. And there was a guy. They had different people over time doing it, but the last guy who did it before Dick Clark was named, I think, Bob Horn or Jim Horn or something like that. And he got arrested for drunk driving, and the TV station fired him. And that's when Dick took over the show. And it was in Philadelphia in those days. And then ABC moved the show to Hollywood, and that's when I got on it. And that was back around, I don't know, 1964, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so I not only did that show, but I was assigned to the Dick Clark Show, which was on ABC, and several of his other shows, It's Happening, and the show we did at the beach called, I got it written down here, so I don't remember, Where the Action Is with Paul Revere and the Raiders. And that was a very big deal. So I worked all those shows.
Paul Revere and the Raiders were on every show? Or
Yeah, well, the show was called Where the Action Is, and it was done at the beach. But they were on every show. And they were a very big group at that time. They were number one in the United States, you know.
yeah, they had a song called Kicks. Kicks just keep getting harder to find. Yeah.
Right. So we did all that stuff. And Dick was, when we did the regular American Bandstand, the dance show, Dick, those kids would come and we'd have to do more than one show. We would do, as I recall, 2 or 3 shows. We would record them in advance. And so the kids would bring clothes and they would change in between shows. And the studio where we did it at ABC was old building, old. I mean, it was not first class in any way. And these kids would go in these horrible smelling bathrooms that were not very clean, very old, and change their clothes. And I felt so sorry for them. I don't know why they didn't allow us to use some dressing rooms for the kids to change in, you know, because those bathrooms were not it was unpleasant to be in there. And so anyway, they would do that, but Dick would have Kentucky Fried Chicken for all the kids. And then in his dressing room, he'd have wine. And we'd go in there and have some wine between shows with the Kentucky Fried Chicken, which was, it was a nice thing for him to do. And of course, kids are working for free. Really, why not? You know?
Now, did he do any of the shows live with the American Bandstand, or was it all recorded?
No, they
beforehand?
couldn't. We had to be taped. And because there would be times when things would go wrong and we'd stop, and we'd have to edit. And so typically on a day where I would work, all day, doing these long. These were 2-hour shows. So I'm thinking, gee whiz, we'd do 6 hours of American Bandstand. Plus, you look at the times in between where you'd have to take a break and lunch and so forth. And I have done well over 8 or 10 hours. And then I had to go and edit.
Wow.
And because the show had to be out like that, and so I'd be there till midnight editing, usually with my editor. So it was a long day for me, and not an easy one. And I have to say that Dick was very intense and very insistent on getting things done. He was very businesslike in a lot of ways, but it was tough working with him.
Now, did he hire you, or did he request to have you on the show, or how did that work?
The deal he had with ABC was that he would do the above the line stuff, what they called above the line and below the line. The below the line costs were carried by ABC, which meant that ABC would assign the crew and pay for it. Dick would do whatever else, all the other stuff he had to pay for. So I was a below the line cost. And he really had no real control over me because I worked for ABC. So that gave me a certain independence that I enjoyed, because otherwise I would have been under the very strict, harsh rule of Dick Clark.
And he was strict sometimes.
Well, there were times when he would. I mean, he was so intense. The man would do shows in New York. He would tape a bunch of $10 billion pyramid, or whatever it was, 10,000. What was the name?
$10,000 pyramid.
$10,000 pyramid. They taped those in New York. Then he'd get on a plane after doing, I don't know how many of those shows, and then he would arrive at ABC, and then he would have to do his other shows, and then he would work all day and all until it would be well into the evening. When he'd finish up, and he maybe have to do a couple of commercials for somebody and other things. I mean, then he would get on an airplane and fly to Las Vegas and gamble all night. I don't know how the man did it. I mean, it was unbelievable. But he was just driven. And, but he did, I mean, I think he paved the way for a lot of good things. Not always easy to work with, but our relationship was pretty good. I did actually do some documentaries with him. I was hired on a show called It's Happening, which was one of his shows. And we did some, it was during the time of the street people in the 60s, where all these kids came to San Francisco and Los Angeles. I mean, they were all the hippies and stuff, and they were the flower kids, the flower children. And streets were full of them, and it was an interesting time. So we did some short documentaries about that whole thing. So Dick would talk to the kids on the street and ask them, where they came from and what they were doing and how they got there and that kind of stuff. And we did, I believe my partner and I did 19 of those short documentaries for Dick Clark. So there's that history that's kind of interesting. And
did you ever spend any free time with him, like go out to lunch or dinner or anything like that?
Well, no, but I do recall, I mean, when he had I think it was the 25th anniversary, he threw a big party.
Oh,
and my wife and I were invited. And I think it was the 25th. It might have been the next one, but I think it was the 25th. And everybody was there, all the big bands. I mean, every rock and roll band you ever heard, they were all guests, and many producers and many people he had worked with over the years. It was a huge party in a very big hall where everything was going on. And they had a camera set up and a projector set up, and they showed bloopers from different shows. Bloopers are outtakes, where things go wrong. People like to watch that stuff when you're in the business. And the night went on, and Dick started getting strange. He started getting angry, and he started getting very, very drunk. And finally he got up on the stage there, and he looked out at all this array of people that had been made by him in some way. And he said, "I made all of you. None of you. You don't understand, and you're not grateful, and blah, blah, blah. And he would name certain producers and said, you did this and blah, blah, blah." And he went on, and then everybody was in total shock. I mean, it was so strange. And it sort of reminded me of the scene in Giant where, what's the great actor, the young actor in Giant?
James Dean.
James Dean, yeah. He's where he gets totally drunk and he knocks over all these shelves of booze and wine and stuff. It falls, collapses at the end. It was almost like that. So anyway, Dick he passes out, falls to the floor. And his wife at the time, who was not the one he was finally married to, went over and helped him. But my wife was with me, and she said, "My God, nobody else is going over there to help him. I mean, nobody, you know." And that was kind of the end of the party. Everybody left. It was very strange. And
Wow.
I mean, but that's just a chapter. It's a thing. It's a part of a man who was a giant in the business. Well, come on, let's just listen now. All the things he did, you know. And one of the shows he did, which he's well known for, is Rock on New Year's Eve. And I worked on that. Well, he said, "Well, did you go to New York?" No, I didn't. Only Dick went to New York to do the evening, because we did all of our shows in Los Angeles in July. We did all the music stuff in July. So that's a little piece of history there.
Did he live mostly in New York then, or did he live in Los Angeles?
No,
Clark.
he had a home in LA. Yeah, he lived in
LA.
Yeah, he had great sports cars. I mean, he did everything pretty much first class. I mean, as I understand it. But I had I had a close enough relationship. I could pick up the phone and call him. So not too many good people could do that. And
right, that's for sure.
Yeah,
there was a skit on Saturday Night Live a few years ago where they were making fun of how hard it is to get hold of Dick Clark, and people are waiting in his office, and they say, "Oh, I've been waiting here for a couple hours. I've been waiting here for 10 hours. I've been waiting here for 2 days," and then Jesus comes in a puff of smoke to says, "I would like to see Dick Clark," and even Jesus couldn't even get in to see Dick Clark. So if you were able to call him on the phone, then that's pretty good.
Well, his wife Carrie Wigton was that was his last wife. Originally was his secretary, and I knew her really well, so that helped. Dick had this marvelous office on Sunset Boulevard for many years, where he had his office. It was a very to be Sunset Boulevard, that was kind of a neat place. And so one time, you had a wonderful view from the second floor looking out. One time he was there in the evening, and he saw this guy beating up on this woman. It might have been a prostitute being beaten up by her John. I don't know. But anyway, Dick went down on the street and punched the guy out, took him and protected the woman. I thought that was prety classy.
Wow. That's quite a story.
And what courage that took, I mean, God knows what could have happened.
Yeah.
But he went out there. And that was a side of Dick that, wow, that's, but he was a good guy, he was a good guy. And so you have to have a lot of respect for that, certainly. And it did get in the newspaper a little bit, but they didn't make a very big deal out of it. I would have, I think, made it a bigger, maybe perhaps today it would have been a bigger thing. So he worked with just about everybody there was. But there was that time back in the beginning when, and it was called payola. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
When I started in radio, there were to get on the air with a lot of radio stations, you had to pay. And that was called payola. It was a bribe to put somebody's record on the air. And that happened a lot. And of course, that was funded by the mob, who had they took over they saw their shot at making a lot of money, and they did they were very much in control of an awful lot of the music business. So eventually there was a House committee on that looked into this. And Dick Clark being one of the early people doing this, he owned some publishing companies and some other agencies. And so they divested him of those interests. He was forced to give them up. But they didn't punish him beyond that, just saying you have to get rid of this stuff. And then the guy who got stuck was, maybe remember the name of the famous announcer who did get stuck.
Not Wolfman Jack.
No. Well, anyway.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
His name was Freed. He had a show called Tops and Pops.
Oh.
His show was Tops and Pops, and he used to make people pay to get their records on. And he worked for a station in Akron, Ohio. But I don't know whether it was a network or just how that worked out. But he was just one of the people. He certainly wasn't the only person, but he got hit really hard. I think he even did some prison time. It was a very strange thing that Dick Clark escaped without much happening, really. So he had that much fame. I mean, they would, they'd be happy to break somebody who isn't that well known. But if you get too famous, they don't touch you.
That was Alan Freed.
That's right, Alan Freed. Yeah. I mean, he was a very big deal, really. When you think about it. And I remember listening to his shows when I was a kid. I mean, he was.
Well, you had spent some time in Ohio, is that right?
Yeah. Well, I grew up, spent a number of years there. Yeah, and so I mean, and I went to Kent State University. I eventually graduated from there, and I was in the military when I was there too, in the Air Reserve. So anyway. I'm trying to think what else we want to touch on.
Well, we talked about your family last time. You had some, I'm going to try a different camera. I'm just going to take a chance and see if this other camera works. I'm frozen here. And oops.
Oh, there, we see it now.
That's not what I wanted. Okay, I'm just going to have to.
I wonder why that locked up on you.
I don't know why my camera locked up.
No. Huh.
Don't know why. Oh well, the other camera doesn't look very good. That's the only problem. So I guess I'll just keep it at that.
Well, this looks good. I mean, honestly, you look great, and we hear you. So
okay. Well, I also wanted to mention Dick Clark had a son, and I believe he was a family friend also. And your daughter, I know Summer said
Dwayne Clark. Yeah, Dwayne. I should let Summer tell the story.
Oh my gosh.
Come on over here and tell.
Does she want to tell it?
Oh, let's see if I can get over there.
You want to sit in my chair?
No, let me scoot
I'll
in.
give you a wider screen here. There you go. You've got a wide screen now.
Okay. So we can handle this.
Okay.
Hi, Summer.
Well,
Summer is
this.
Ron's
Here we go.
daughter.
I'll just put my arm around my daddy.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So, Dwayne came to our recording studio, Skyline
Dwayne
Recording
Clark.
in Topanga.
Dick Clark's
Yeah,
son.
Dwayne Clark. Dick Clark's son. And we became friends. And we were both, I think later on, going to UCLA at the same time. He was a couple of years younger than me. And I remember he and his friend, I can't remember his friend's name, that he was rooming with at UCLA. But one day they said, "Do you want to go to Las Vegas?" And I said, "Well, I have school tomorrow." And they said, "Oh, we'll get you back in time for school." And my classes were later that day. So, and first of all, I want to disclaimer this. Dwayne is an amazing man. He's a wonderful director. He's happily married and has wonderful children, and he's just become a magnificent person, very much like his father. I did meet Dick back in '78, and Dick Clark was just a truly honorable, beautiful man. So, but this is okay. So we're going back into time, and young kids going to Vegas. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll go with you guys. And they said, as long as I can get back for school the next day. And so we drove to Vegas in Dwayne's old station wagon. And I was like, you're the son of Dick Clark. What are you doing in an old station wagon? He goes, it's a thing. My dad wants me to be responsible. He wants me to repair it myself. So we went up to Vegas because he and his friend had been studying, I think it was blackjack or something like that, and thought, oh, we'll be able to pay for these repairs, by winning at blackjack. So we get up there, and I'm thinking, oh, what am I doing? And I stayed in the station wagon. I just slept, and we had no food. I don't remember having any water, but of course we were young. We're resilient, right? And so they played, I guess, all night, and they came back to the car, crestfallen. Oh no. It didn't work. So we're taking the station wagon back, and I thought, okay, that's fine. And they were just such good people, such good people. And Dwayne is just one of the most honorable people that I've ever met in my life. And so we're coming back from Vegas towards LA. And now, if you have not done that trip back in whatever it was, the 80s, 81, I think it was, you're coming back downhill. You're on the downhill slant from Vegas to Los Angeles, and you can kind of coast all the way down, which is what we had to do because the car broke down on our way. And they're like, oh, okay, let's just keep leaning forward, hoping that the station wagon would make it to the gas station that they knew was there. And we pull into the gas station, and then Dwayne got on the phone with his dad and said, Daddy, can I have your credit card information? And of course, Dick said, okay, yes. And I guess included in that was what I had was my first Cactus Cooler, which is a soda that's popular was popular on the West Coast. I don't even know if it's around anymore. But it was so delicious because it was like the first thing I'd had to drink or eat in that whatever 12-hour period of time or whatever. So, but he's a great guy, and it was really fun. But I wanted to say one other thing, if it's okay, Steve.
Sure. Yes.
I have just as daughter of this amazing man here. These guys are like, my dad was an associate director, and he worked as director and producer. Oftentimes he did the lighting. He did so many different jobs as an associate director. He was called on to really do everything. And he stood in for producers and that I remember him being gone a lot because he was working so much. But these guys are kind of the unknown heroes of the television industry. And, I just wanted to share that because, and even as far as, my dad, of course, did so much. We worked at the 1984 Olympics at the same time, and I saw what he did and how many hours he put in there. And, Dick Clark was this amazing man who had this presence that was, we used to call it, you were square. And we used to go like, oh, are you, like square, which meant you were conservative and very, like meticulous and only ate, Cracker Jacks and malto meal or something. And, but Dick presented himself as this very handsome, he oftentimes wore a suit and a tie, conservative man who embraced everybody in all cultures and embraced anybody and all the hippies and everybody that came in. He embraced everybody. And I think that was why he made rock music tangible to the public in a way that nobody else could have done. And those are just a couple of my observations of him.
Well, he certainly never gave up on life. I mean, he worked until the very end. I mean, doing as much as he could, even after he had his stroke. He worked with Ryan Seacrest a bit, and who helped him out on his Rockin' New Year's Eve show. But Nick stayed in there right till the very end. I mean, he was there.
Yeah.
And extraordinary. I wish I could remember all the marvelous things that I could talk about, but
well, you worked with the Beach Boys, and you worked with
all these amazing,
so many amazing artists.
Yeah,
You worked with Aretha Franklin. You worked with Tina Turner.
You should mention Tina a little bit. It's kind of an interesting story. Of course, we know a lot about Tina because of her movies and stuff. But when I first worked with her, it was I think she was on Shindig, and we had certain things.
I'll move away so you can have him.
No, so you can stay.
There were certain things that the information the director wanted me to pass on, and so I told Tina the things we wanted to do. So we need to. There were certain things she had to do, and I forget it, but there were stage movements, and so she said, "Well, you'll have to talk to my producer." So I don't do anything. I don't do anything with. He has to approve everything I do. You know, what was the guy's name? Her husband. I mean, that guy
Ike
was
Turner.
a
No,
monster.
Ike Turner.
Ike Turner, yeah. What a monster he was. You know, I mean, I felt so sorry for her because she was just completely under this guy's thumb, you know. But what a wonderful artist she was. What a great singer, great
One of
performer.
the greats. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
I just wanted to ask, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Steve? I just wanted to see if my dad might answer this question because it was so much fun. When he worked on the Lawrence Welk Show with Jim Hobson, who was the producer of the show, and Jim asked my dad to stand in for him to produce the show when Jim was away. And then Jim gave us a really special gift.
That changed our lives. I mean, really. He gifted us with a live turkey as a thank you for doing the show for him. This live turkey was in a box. I mean, the box arrived at the studio, and I had no idea what was in it till I got home. You know, I'm carrying this box. I have no idea, but it's a large hen turkey, and well, I think he expected us to eat it. You know, well, the turkey pops out of the box in our living room, and the kids take a look, and they just love this turkey. And pretty soon, Turkey's there watching TV with my kids. Now, I can't do anything. Turkey's going to be a friend forever, you know. And she lived, good Lord, how many years?
5 years.
It was 5 years before she passed.
And this was a gift from whom again?
From the producer of the Welk Show, Jim Hobson. And because I had directed this one show for him, you know, when he was sick. And but that turkey was around our yard, and the cat would chase the turkey, and the turkey would go in the swimming pool. And my wife would have to leap in the swimming pool and grab the turkey before it down.
Did you?
And every time I saw Jimmy, he says, "You're never going to forgive me for that turkey." I said, "No."
Well, what did you do on Thanksgiving? Did you have a turkey dinner, or did you? You didn't
Oh,
eat
we
the,
probably did. But not that.
not that turkey.
No, she was a pet. She became a very good friend.
She was indeed. She'd follow me around. I mean, she wanted to watch everything I was doing all the time. Go out in the garage to do some work or something. She'd be out there watching me.
Well, let's
It
go
was
back to the Lawrence Welk Show a little bit now. That was your, I mean, it had to be a great gig because they were. You mentioned to me that they were very nice to you. I mean, it was a very friendly
Oh,
environment.
well, it was like, yeah, it was like family. I mean, Lawrence let me use all of his homes. I mean, I was invited to stay at his every place that he lived in at one time or another. And if he wasn't there, I could go to Palm Springs, use his house or his any of his places in his mobile parks, you know. So
We have a question from Anne Marie. She wants to know what the name of the turkey was. The turkey had a name.
we just call her Turkey.
Yeah.
Turkey. Okay. Well, and you got some perks, other perks on the Lawrence Welk Show because I know you are a songwriter, and how did it go that you had one of your songs picked up by as a production number on the Lawrence Welk Show?
Well,
What's
I
the
was always,
backstory?
you know, I was writing a lot of songs. We were doing a lot of music on our own, you know, and so I mean, if I could get one of my songs on his show, it would have been a very big deal. And so this one song that I got, it just seemed to me that it just fit the show. It was it was actually a children's song, but I just felt that it was a very upbeat kind of thing that Lawrence would like. And so I had Bob Smell, who was his piano player, and my wife sang with him. And because I used Bob, I mean, it made it familiar for Lawrence. And I showed the tape to Lawrence, and he liked it, you know. And he said I could put this song on the show. Well, there was a lot of competition from a lot of people that wanted to put songs on the show, and particularly a new song. Wow, you know, it's a big deal.
Well, I'm going to play the tape of it now, and you wrote the words and music to this song?
I wrote the music, and I co-wrote the words with another young lady.
Elizabeth Sterling?
Who named Elizabeth Sterling. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to play it, and then you can tell us more of the story after we play it. And I hope it'll come out on your end so you can see it. But here we go.
Your heels, see how it feels to smile. It feels like a sunny day, it feels like the Milky Way inside your eyes. What a nice surprise to see stars in the afternoon. You can whistle a tune. Take a look around, you'll be bound to find a friend who's waiting to be found. Why don't you go say hello? Show him how to kick up his heels. It feels like a sunny day. It feels like the Milky Way when you kick up your heels.
Wow.
Memories.
Yeah,
That
so
was
that's a song you wrote, and Lawrence Welk himself.
Yeah, the whole thing about it was that the girl who wrote it with me, Elizabeth Sterling, we had done a number of things together. She was actually producing our kids, and they had we were doing shows, live shows on stage. But Elizabeth wanted to start a publishing company. It was going to be called Wild Plum Music. And in order to make this happen, we had to get an attorney. And so he helped us with getting the whole thing legalized and getting us into ASCAP, which is a very big deal at that time. It was hard to get into ASCAP. Today it was a lot easier. And so the whole thing came down for the one play that we got on the show. We got $1,000 check. And
Nice.
it just worked out very nicely because the lawyer got all the money. We make nothing. Well, we got on the show.
I imagine that production was expensive. There was a lot of things going on there in
Well,
that set.
they put some money into that. Yeah, well, there again, it was helpful that Jim Hobson, the producer, liked me, because it could have been a shit, could have been anything. But my goodness, tap dancing horses, my goodness.
And that was 1971. I don't think I watched it at the time because I was like in my hippie days, listening to Rolling Stones and, traveling around in my old beat up van, So I wasn't watching Lawrence Welk, although I always did like Lawrence Welk.
Not exactly Stones.
Now we talked about that, how you met the Rolling Stones last interview. And
Yeah.
by the way, that interview is available on YouTube. That's such a great story. I don't mind hearing the story again though, but that was on Shindig.
Shindig, yeah. I was Shindig, I've worked with everybody in rock and roll, and it was amazing. And I knew nothing about rock and roll when I first got into a thing. My wife and I, we were doing folk music, and we were working in concerts and stuff, but we were doing folk music. It was all about Pete Seeger in those days, and Arlo Guthrie, and
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
but early Bob Dylan, of course. Dylan did some wonderful stuff. And Joan Baez was another person. We did get a chance to meet Joan at our attorney's office when he had a party at his home, actually, and Joan was there. I was so
Starstruck?
impressed that I couldn't talk. She came over. She wanted to say something, and I was just standing. I couldn't think of anything to say. It was like Joan Baez. It was a big deal to me. It's amazing how, in spite of the fact that I had worked with a lot of famous people, somebody that I had a lot of respect for, all of a sudden, more than something usual. But we did a lot of stuff, and one of the most interesting things is, in the early days, back in the 60s, the guy who developed the Today, Home, and Tonight shows, and I think also Cameo Theater for NBC, was Sylvester Pat Weaver.
Okay.
Sylvester Pat Weaver had a brother, Doodles Weaver, who did a lot of crazy. Did you ever hear Doodles Weaver and his satires that he did in music? Well, Doodles Weaver had this very funny band. If you ever get a chance, it's just crazy stuff. But Pat Weaver was the big muck producer at NBC, and at one time they had a photograph of him that was 6 stories high hanging in the lobby there. Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal. But Steve Allen show came out of that. Steve was the very first Tonight Show host, and a lot of people give it credit to people other than him, but no, Steve was the first. And that show kicked off the careers of Edie Gourmet and her husband, Steve Lawrence. I mean, that was big. And I remember the band was a very famous band later. Escapes me. But then there was, so many comedians and great people that were just marvelous comedians and stuff. All worked with them.
Red Skelton.
Well, Skelton might have been a guest on the show. I'm sure he was.
And there was Tom Poston. And
Pat Paulson. Yeah, that's right.
And
I remember what was it, the guy that did the Mexican thing. With the
Jose
stranger.
Jimenez.
Jose Jimenez, yeah. Jose, man. Her name is Jose Jimenez.
I remember that.
That was a great bit, and
he had Lenny Bruce on there too.
Lenny Bruce, yeah. I worked with Lenny Bruce earlier.
Really?
At ABC, yeah.
Tell us about that.
In his very early days, we did a show, and it was a time of the Beat generation. And there were these what they call beat poets and stuff. And it was time of Lawrence Welk and all these people from San Francisco. And so we had a local show that was featured all of these very famous people like Lawrence Welk and there were a number of artists who were beatnik artists who had their artwork, and so it was all being done in this one studio, and there were arguments. Who is this guy, Lenny Bruce? What the hell is he doing on the show? He's got nothing to do with us. I mean, he's a comic. We don't have anything to do with that. And there was a big discussion about whether Lenny was going to be on the show or not.
Wow.
And then there were other artists who didn't like each other. Well, he isn't part of the thing. It was all fragmented, and we were going nuts because there were all these people who really hated each other. It was really strange.
And what was the name of the show?
But everybody finally agreed to do the show, and it was on. It was a couple-hour show, but it was all about that era, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Now, Lenny Bruce, of course, became famous for the first guy who really got away with swearing.
Yeah.
And he was arrested a few times for it.
I was going to say he got arrested.
Yeah, I mean, the police came in and arrested it. It said, if you're going to say one swear word, you're getting arrested. Now think about today, what goes on. Good Lord.
Yeah, George Carlin kind of broke the barriers after that.
Oh my goodness. Well, there were, Lenny Bruce paved the way.
Right.
But he was very funny without saying all those things. I mean, but comics every comic I ever worked with, and I did work with an awful lot of them. Every one of them always, like Red Skelton or any of those guys, they didn't know when to stop. They never knew what the limit was. And it was, they were always testing the limits, It's very interesting about comedians. And I could go on, I could mention specifically a lot of them, but I don't think there were many that were exempt. That they could be very funny, and then they would go too far, and they would get in trouble for it with somebody, But they opened the doors for a lot of us to walk through, really,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dolly.
Andy Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman, there's an example. Yeah, certainly. Andy, I worked with him, and I mean, he was the strangest guy I ever worked with. I mean, and I mean, but when we would go to do editing or something, he seemed like a perfectly normal person. It was strange. I mean, but his shows and his, I mean, these things he would do, wrestling women, you know, and then he got hurt very badly when he pissed off a real wrestler, and the guy slammed him on his head and really almost killed him. And then we did the show Fridays. Now, what was that show that Andy was on? It was because I did Taxi. I did the Taxi. I did the pilot for that. I was the director of the pilot for Taxi, believe it or not. And Andy Kaufman was perfect in that show. It was just ideal for that. You know, I did not do the series. I just did the pilot. But what a terrific pilot it was. Great writers. Everything was great. You just knew that thing was going to go. And
that had the piano theme for the theme song. There was a piano.
Yeah,
right. Piano theme. Bob James.
Yeah. Right. Well, it was but anyway, Andy was on this show called Fridays, and the strangest thing happened with him. He was doing this bit at the end of the show, and all of a sudden he gets really angry and you don't know whether he's acting or not. But finally he stomps off the show. It wasn't in the script. Like he's really pissed.
Uh-oh.
And he just stomped off the show. And everybody's, well, that wasn't in the script. What the hell? You know, I don't remember whether he hit somebody or did something. I know it's but something or somebody got him going there. And that was the last we ever saw him, you know. I mean, it was, and then people often say, well, did he die? We don't know. Do you remember that?
Kind of, yeah. He disappeared.
He disappeared. Where the hell? What happened to him? Now I did a pilot with him. It was called Andy's Playhouse or something like that. It was a crazy thing, but he was like a little kid playing. I mean, it was the strangest show. And you know, I mean, the network couldn't what? I don't know what this is. You know? But that was, I mean, he was just odd guy. I mean, he could change these personalities and go into the editing room with them, and he sounded about as straight as anybody you ever talked to. I don't know. But it was, I certainly, I mean, I look back at the number of people that I've had to work with. He was certainly one that it would stand out as unusual, certainly. And
do you ever hear from any of the your old acquaintances who were famous in those days?
Well, you know, it's been a long time. You know, we never. You didn't really ever get together much. I mean, we spent so much time together. We hated each other. I think it's like, I mean, you work on a show for 17, 18 hours listening to somebody. I mean, you want to go home and
you have a family, right?
You want to talk to your wife and your kids, your dog, you know, something real.
Your turkey.
Yeah, the turkey. But
Uncle Andy's Playhouse is what it was called.
Oh, Uncle Andy's Playhouse. That was the name of the show. Yeah.
Oh man.
And you worked on All in the Family, right? The pilot for that.
Well, did we talk about All in the Family? Because I did the pilot to that.
No, with Archie Bunker.
Yeah. What happened with that was that they had more than one pilot, and when I was at ABC, we did a second pilot. And the reason was, the purpose of it was for the producer to find a better person to play the meathead. And they weren't happy with the meathead
With
who they
Reiner,
had.
Rob Reiner.
Reiner wasn't tried out yet, you know.
Oh, okay.
So while we're doing this show, and I'm the associate director, the casting director comes up to me and said, you know, would you like to try out for that part?
Wow.
We think you look about right, you know. And I said, well, you know, this is the funniest script I ever read. It is incredible, but it'll never get on the air because it's just too risky. I know ABC can't handle it.
Really?
I can't risk losing my job because I tried out for a TV show. But I thanked her, you know. Well, I missed out on a pretty good
Amazing. You could have been a star.
Now, we don't know that they would have bought it. You know, I mean, I might not have
Right.
passed the test. But at the time I think I was just wearing a mustache or something. I was enough of a hippie to fit the part, you know. And it was my appearance, I think, that more than anything that they liked. However, I might have done all right because I have had some acting experience, in fact, quite a bit of it, you know, on
Right.
stage. So it's interesting what could have been. However, Rob Reiner took that part, and it was on. The show went on forever on CBS,
It
but
became
ABC
legendary. Yeah.
ABC wouldn't touch it, you know. And so I was correct in that. I knew that ABC would not.
Oh,
touch it.
ABC didn't pick it up.
No, they wouldn't. ABC would not show a woman's navel, you know,
Oh,
in a
Jeannie. I Dream of Jeannie.
TV commercial for they wouldn't allow a navel to be shown. I mean, it was unbelievable, you know. But then here's another interesting story. I mean, this is the weirdest. I can't. It's almost. It's so far out. It sounds like, did you invent this? They had me, ABC Broadcast Standards had me do a show about pornography. And every conceivable kind of pornography was on this show. It was a closed circuit broadcast only to members of the
company.
The restricted, you know, the people, the broadcast standards people. No, it's a company, you know, but there were probably, I don't know, 20, 30 of them in there all looking at all these pornographic. I mean, they had, there wasn't anything. I was so disgusting. I was scared to want, you know, I didn't even want to put it on the air.
It wasn't on the air. It was on a closed circuit, though.
Closed circuit, yeah. But
My goodness.
that was interesting. They chose me to do it. I don't know.
Don't know. Hey, I don't know.
But it was certainly the strangest thing I ever directed. And they said the purpose was because they wanted to know what they were dealing with. Well, okay, I guess. I mean, you know, at the time they weren't allowing anybody to show a navel. You know, when they were doing the Paul Revere and the Raiders show at the beach, they forced all these kids to cover up their navels with towels. And so you never saw, and all the girls were wearing bikinis, you know, and you couldn't show a navel. So they had to, all these kids had towels around their waist down at the beach. It made no sense at all. But that's how it was done. And so
It's a different time.
Yeah, well, it was, that was very conservative even for those times. I mean, if people were dressing up in bikinis at the beach, why would you want to? Come on, that's just common, you know, that people would be at the beach with bikinis on, and so why would you cover that up? It was just silly, you know.
Well,
didn't make sense, but they sure as hell did, And another show I worked was a pilot, was a wonderful pilot called Mixed Nuts, who had been a terribly funny show to put on the air. Podcast Standards killed it, gee whiz. I mean, well, it was a funny show about people in a mental institution, which was, there was a famous movie done by, what was the name of that movie? Do you remember about the mental institution?
With Jack Nicholson?
With Jack Nicholson, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember
Well,
the name
it
of
was
it.
kind of based on it was based on a thing like that.
The Cuckoo Nest. The Cuckoo Nest.
Yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over, yeah.
Yeah.
And before that, there had been some foreign films that were dealing with issues like that, about showing that people in the mental institution were smarter and more normal than people outside.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, there was some beautiful. I remember a beautiful foreign film about that. It was a fantasy, of course, but it was lovely. But that was all part of the changing times, So many things. So over the years, how much has changed.
Well, we showed your
We
film
want to talk,
last time, or
let's
we
see,
talked about your
how
film
long have we been
last
going?
time.
How long have we been going here?
Well, we've been going about an hour, 20 minutes, and we can wrap it up pretty soon, I think.
I want to do a Marlon Brando story.
Marlon Brando?
Marlon Brando, yeah.
Okay, The Godfather.
Yeah. So one day I'm at work and I get this message to go to Dave Loring's office, and it's very hush hush, something special that I had to go talk to him about. And I go in there and Dave said, "Look, I don't want you to talk about this to anybody." He says, "But you're going to direct an interview with Marlon Brando at his home. And we haven't told it. We're not even telling the crew or anybody. Just keep this quiet." And he gave me the directions to get to his house. And the crew was also given the directions to the house, but they didn't tell them who was going to be there. And so it was early morning. I got to get up, and we were supposed to be there at the house at I think it was 8:30 or something like that. And this is going to be an interview that's going to go on Good Morning America.
Live?
Yeah, live back east, So the thing was that Marlon never did interviews with anybody about anything, ever. I mean, he wasn't available. I mean, this was a huge coup for America, Good Morning America. And so I'd been told, I mean, no, when you get there and don't create any kind of a problem or disturbance, do as little, just do the thing and you leave. Because he may just leave, decide at any time he's not going to do it. So, I mean, so I get to the place and we're early. I think we're supposed to be there at 8 and got there at 7:30. I left a little early because I was afraid, if the traffic, I don't want to be late,
Sure.
So we're all in this truck that I had the crew, and the crew they gave me, these guys had been working all night, all day, all night. They were in 24-hour shift. They were a news crew, and this was added onto their shift. And these guys are what they called golden time, which is double their salary, normal salary, for just working the regular hours. Now, these guys are paid very well to begin with. Double, This is a very costly deal for the company. And I've never worked with any of these guys. I didn't know them. And I didn't know what their capabilities were or anything, And so anyway, we get there, and we're on, what the hell was the street?
It's in Encino or something like that, right?
It was in Beverly Hills. It was up in the hills there.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe it'll come to me when I'm talking to you. So anyway, we pull up and there's these big gates. I mean, this wall is maybe 10 feet tall, and these huge gates. We're on Park Street. No, wait a minute, something. I'm hearing my voice. It was in Beverly Hills. It was up in the hills there. We're getting playback here. Maybe it'll come to me when I'm.
Yeah, I'm turning the feedback off here.
So anyway, we pull up. Okay, we okay now? Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, that should be better.
So, I tell the crew, I said we're doing Marlon Brando. They don't give a shit. It doesn't matter to them. We just want to go home,
Yeah, they've met stars before. Yeah.
No big deal to them. So I'm sitting there and I said, well, we can't go in until 8 o'clock. I said, I don't want to be early. We don't want to disrupt anything. So I made him wait. And this guy comes across the street, and one of Marlon's, apparently one of his guards or something. And I said, well, we're with the ABC crew. We've got an interview with Marlon at 8 o'clock. And I said, we're just a little early, so we'll just sit here. And he says, well, why don't you come in, And I said, well, I don't want to get, Marlon might be skittish, So I said, no, I don't think so. And so the guy leaves, and he comes back in another, said, oh, look, why don't you come in? He says, I think Marlon would be pissed if he thought you were sitting out here.
Okay.
I said, well, okay. So the gates open, big gates, electric gates. And we go in, and my God, looks like a jungle in there. I mean, it's all bamboo and stuff. I mean, it's almost impenetrable. And signs about vicious dogs will kill you if you don't leave your, I mean, it was every 10 feet there was some warning about, and I'm sure there were cameras and everything else there. And so first I didn't even go, there was a driveway that went, and I didn't want to go by the driveway. I said, we'll just stay here by the gate. And the guy comes back, will you please come back? He said, Marlon would be pissed if he thought you're back here. So then I had the guys drive up to the house, and we go through this long driveway and everything, and happy that we aren't going to get shot or killed by getting there. And so we get to the house, and there's a couple of steps you have to go up and to the yard, and then this house, it looks an industrial building. It doesn't look as much like a house as it does like an industrial building. It's just glass everywhere, glass. And I'm thinking, good Lord, what lighting problems are we going to have there, And so I didn't want to go in the house. The guy said, well, he comes out, will you please come in? I think Marlon would be pissed if he thought you're sitting out here. Okay. I mean, so I said to the crew, okay, look, let's load the equipment in very quietly. And I said, but for God's sake, don't make any noise and just let's. So we get in there, and the guys set up their stuff, and the guy says, can I get you something to eat? And I said, oh gosh, no, Well, Marlon would be pissed.
Marlon would be pissed if you don't eat.
I said, well, I guess we could have some orange juice, So I said, ruined it. I guess we'll have some orange juice. So a guy runs off and he's getting orange juice. Then Marlins arrives, and he's in his skivvies and a t-shirt, and he's immense. He's at that point in his life, he was way overweight, and just huge. But he's barefoot, skivvies, walks in. Says, how you guys doing? He says, did you get something to eat? I said, oh, we had some nice orange juice. Orange juice? He says, what the hell? Get these guys some food. He screams,
Don't want them pissed.
You get to, I mean, so they run out, they bring out all this breakfast for us, And, I mean, about anything you could think of, And so then the issue was, what we're going to set up. And I look around this room and it's glass everywhere. Jesus, it's glass everywhere. How am I going to escape the sun? It's coming up. I don't know where the hell it's going to be. You know, what, you know. So I would set up, I said, well, I got a chair. And I said, well, we'll use this chair. And it's a big armchair. And I think, oh, it'll be fine. And then I'm looking and the sun is moving. And I keep, look, can we move this chair a little bit? So I keep moving the chair, and then I have to move some tables, and I have to move some other stuff. And then there's other things that are in the way, and we start moving things. Pretty soon we got the whole apartment is just, everything's moved. I'm not supposed to be doing anything. I'm moving all this furniture, trying to get I just wanted to look good, you know. So then one of the final things I did was I found a little end table, and I saw that he had a chess set, and I thought, gee, that'd be great. Put chess set on the end table, it looked good. Well, I'm a chess fan, and at that time I was playing tournament chess, so it was something that really interested me. And well, it turned out this chess set was a very special chess set. It wasn't just an ordinary chess. The pieces actually moved themselves, and it was guided by a computer inside. I mean, that was a very, very unusual, very rare thing. And well, I was impressed. I mean, gee whiz. And so Marlon says, well, do you like my chess set? Yeah, I said, gee, he said, well, you can play against it. Would you like to do that? I said, well, sure. And he said, well, you just turn it on, and he showed me some things. And so I was going to try to play, but I couldn't get I couldn't get it to be activated. And so anyway, we agreed that he was going to sit in his chair. So he comes out, and he says, you're only shooting from the waist up, right? And I said, yeah, that's right. So he didn't put any pants on. He put on a shirt. He came out, and he's got nothing on below. So that's how we did that interview. And we hooked up with New York and everything, and the interview went fine.
Oh, that's good. Whew.
And it was a really big deal, you know. But I can tell you a little bit. The interview was about anniversary of Martin Luther King's death, mm-hmm. and the funeral and so forth. And Brando was very concerned about things like that. You know, he was a very big supporter of the American Indian also. Mm-hmm. And so he did a wonderful interview with I think it was with Charlie Gibson on Good Morning America. And he was certainly erudite. He had great command of English. He was a terrific speaker and powerful presence. And
you were right there in his house.
Yeah.
But the interview guy was in New York?
Oh, this was in Hollywood.
Or
his house was up in Beverly Hills. Now, people thought he was living because he owned an island in the Pacific, South Pacific, near Valley High. He had bought an island there, and he had a resort there, and his daughter was living there, as I recall. And of course, there were these horrific events that had happened later where the brother shot the daughter, and I don't even get. I mean, his life ended in a terrible tragedy, really, for his family. Mm. But while we were there, I mean, women were trying to get in. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, he told me that women would come stark naked somehow, get to his house and try to climb in bed with him. Which is, you know, I'm sure he didn't resist too hard, but it happened. And so anyway, after the interview, he says, we got to play that. How did you enjoy playing the chess? I said, do you want one on? I couldn't turn it on. He said, well, then why don't we play chess? Well, that'd be lovely, but I've got to get back, you know. I got a crew on golden time. Marlon wants to play chess. Well, what do? You don't want to create a problem.
Martin will be pissed off if you don't play chess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Oh, okay. So I thought, well, I'll just, So we started playing, and he had a reputation for being a good chess player. Well, he wasn't. He was just what we call a coffee house player. He knew the moves, but he didn't play very well, and I immediately got a huge advantage on him. I thought, holy shit, I don't want to beat this guy. Oh, God, I don't want to do that. And I said, Marlon, it looks pretty even to me. Why don't we just call it a draw? And I said, no, let's play it out. Let's play it out. Oh, God, I don't want him to win or to lose. I mean, he's making terrible mistakes. He's putting his queen on pre and everything. And I'm saying, Marlon, I think better take that move back. It doesn't look very good. But every time we'd come to, I want to end the game, he wouldn't want to end it. And I thought, well, so I had to play to somehow make this come out to a draw, because I didn't certainly want to lose to this guy, That's and so it was a very unusual game, because here I'm playing to make it come out even, and he's playing to try to win, but he doesn't know how to. And so we played to the very end, and then there were just the two kings on the board, and then that was a draw. Well, this took us to about 5 or 6 o'clock at night.
And your crew is still there?
And all the time the crew is there. But Marlon had a ham radio station with a 50-foot tower. And he showed it to the crew. Well, all the crew had had licenses for the first-class license. In order to be an engineer at ABC, you had to have a license.
Right.
And so they were all into ham radio. And so they were down there playing ham radio while Marlon and I were playing chess.
You guys are, what a story. Wow.
So he wanted to invite us to dinner. I mean, we would have gone down there forever. I mean, he did not want us to leave. I mean, it's just amazing how it all turned around. And I look back at that and I said, this guy, I mean, he knew everybody in the world, but for some reason, he didn't like them or couldn't deal with them, because they were so in awe. They thought he was somebody, one of his acting characters or something, I don't know exactly what it was. I would think about that. I said, the guy was really lonely. I mean, why would this unknown crew of guys from ABC be so important, And I never got chewed out. ABC never complained about the bill. But boy, oh boy, those engineers got paid a fortune. Let's see here. The crew played ham while Barnum played bacon.
Well, Marlon played bacon.
That's from summer.
Well, that's
So anyway, that's
great.
kind of a wrap
Those are
on
some great
Marlon.
stories. And
I wrote about that chess game, the most unusual chess game I ever played.
I guess it played to a draw that you.
Well, you had to play to a draw. I mean, it was just it was all backwards.
Well, that's great. Now, you and your wife used to work together. Well, I know your wife's name, but I never met her in person.
Lisa.
So
Yeah, Lisa, yes.
Lisa.
We
And
sure did. We started out,
she was also a very creative person, from what you've told me.
wonderful artist, But we started out playing folk music, and it was basically because we were doing stuff for the kids. I mean, she was singing songs to the kids. She wanted to sing to the kids. That was her goal. And her first songs were from a Burl Ives songbook. And while she was singing to the kids, I thought, gee, well, that was fun. I like to play too. So I started picking up the guitar, and And then I got a banjo, so we'd have different instruments to play. I learned how to play the 5-string banjo. And then we started getting involved with other people who were doing this in LA. And we were invited by the city park system to do concerts in the park at different times. And we did, well, I guess we did talk about the TV show, didn't we? It was Weaver. How far did we get with that? Did I get as far as the TV show?
I think you just
I mentioned
mentioned it in
Sylvester
passing.
Platt Weaver was created the Today Home and Tonight Show. Did I go beyond that? No, I guess I didn't. So Pat Weaver and his daughter Sigourney, very famous actress who was in Alien and everything, and what was the other Ghostbusters? She was in that. Sigourney Weaver, very, very pretty girl, and they lived in Santa Barbara. And but Sylvester Pat Weaver, after he retired from television, he started the idea of pay TV. Nobody had ever really thought about doing it that much. In those days, that was a big deal. So he had managed to get this thing so it was going to be on the air. And Lisa and I were the first guests on this first pay TV show done by Pat Weaver. And at the time, Lisa and I were working with a guy named Norm, and I can't remember his last name, but we had our group was called the Arlen Singers. And but I had to be in New York for some kind of Directors Guild meeting or something the day of the show. So I fly in from New York. I get from the airport, and I have to go down. There's people there, a huge audience, waiting for the show to start, and because they're waiting for me to get there, I guess. And so it starts, and we were I'm hardly able to play. I mean, I got to play the 5-string banjo, and I just get off an airplane. I'm exhausted. So my performance probably wasn't very good. Nobody seemed to notice, but I did, And so we were on the very first pay TV show, which is some sort of landmark,
And was it live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure as what. Yeah.
Well, live TV seems to be your thing. You just, but there's one more thing I want you to talk about before we go. And you won an award for your work at the Olympics, I believe it was, and it was a pretty prestigious award.
1984 Olympics, yeah.
And what?
This was an interesting thing.
How did that come about?
Well, the Olympics was, to me, was the biggest deal that I was going to ever work on. I had planned to leave ABC, and I thought I'll wait till the Olympics. I really wanted, if I can possibly, be on the Olympics. I loved doing sports. I loved live shows. I liked the action. It was so much working on drama is just slow and it's boring. But when you do sports, it's everything's it's electric. You're doing everything.
Oh, your camera froze.
Comes up.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay.
So the big deal comes up, and the girl that does the scheduling for ABC had a certain preference for certain people, and she was not scheduling intelligently by ability or years of experience. So she scheduled this girl who was a very nice girl and a very smart girl, but who had very limited experience doing stuff, to be doing this show. And I was to be subordinate to her, which was kind of silly, but that's the way it was worked out on the schedule. I didn't complain, but I thought, gee, So all the people are getting all their great assignments, and this thing we're doing is just going to be a summary of the day's events for American Airlines. It's not even going to go on the network or anything. It's just American Airlines. And it's going to be a one-shot deal. So we get in there, and they have an engineer in charge there, and from the department, and they explain how things are going to be done. And there's this meeting, and the producer from New York is there, and so forth. And the meeting, I said, "Well, gentlemen," I said, "if you try to do it, it's not going to work. The way you got this hooked up, it's not going to work. I've done a million of these things, and this will not work the way you got it set up.
Wow.
It was wrong." So they said, well, how do we do it? And so I explained to them all the technical stuff that I knew, how to set this thing up so we could get this accomplished. And I got to get this chair moved. But my butt was getting sore.
Arm chair, arm down. There you go.
So anyway, the producer from New York says, he said, "I'm looking in the Directors Guild thing, and my God, you've got an amazing set of credits here. You've done a lot of big stuff." He said, "Why are you just number 2 guy?" And I said, "Well, I don't do the scheduling. I just work, He said, "Well, now you're doing number 1, and the girl's going to have to be number 2. So he broke the news to her. And I'm thinking, well, okay, it's a one shot. Well, it turns out the announcer says, "Well, where's my script?" Well, there is no script. Well, where's the writer? The announcer says, "I don't write." And I said, "Well, I write. I could do that." And then there was a question of music. Well, nobody was on it. I said, "Well, I know music. I can get that. I can do that." And so I take over all these things. And so I write the first show. I mean, it's a summary of the day's events. And it's exciting stuff. I mean, we're not just doing one event. We're doing the best part of each event. And so the girl's job was to log what was going on. And then I would, using those things, I would do the editing, bring it together. And at first they were going to fire her. The producer, "She's not fast enough. She's not getting the stuff to it." I said, "Well, give her a shot, give her a chance." He said, "Well, but they wanted to fire her,
Gee.
So she was out in the parking lot. She was crying. And she said, and I said, "Look, don't worry about it. I'm going to make sure that you can do the job. Don't worry about it." I said, "You'll do fine." And I it saved her, and she worked out fine on the show eventually because she did learn how to do things. But I mean, it was a fast. You had to be quick and you had to know what you're doing. But we did put this thing together. Well, American Airlines loved it, and they said, "We want to do a whole month of the Olympics. We want it." We bought it.
Wow.
They bought it for the entire month. ABC saw it, the producers, and said, "My God, this is the best thing we got." The summary of the day's events, that's going to be the start of every single show. I mean, the thing just took off. And
In the Olympics,
so
Summer
that
Olympics.
was it was Summer Olympics, and that was the basis for my award, because this was a big deal. ABC made a lot of money off of what I did with the American Airlines, and they took that show, and they took those performances and they bundled them and they sold them to people, events in the Olympics, and you could buy summary of the day's events for any day, and they made some money off of that too. So I mean, it was a gold mine for them. But there's another part of the story that I didn't mention. That going into it,
Okay. It was an Emmy that you won, right?
yeah, Emmy Award, yeah.
That's a huge deal. You say it so softly, but Emmy is like, isn't that like the top of the heap there?
Well, that's what they do when they give out awards. It's a very beautiful award. It's a beautiful, and it's gold, real gold. It's a nice thing.
Amazing. Okay, I want to hear the rest of the story, though. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, the other part of the story is that going into this event, I forgot to mention the fact. I mean, all of a sudden they discovered they didn't have enough line producers. Everybody had been assigned, but they didn't have a line producer for the opening ceremony show, which was being done at Griffith Park with all these stars. So I'm assigned to be the line producer. It's like, how do you do this in 1 second? I mean, no preparation. You're going to be the line producer. So I produce the line. Now it is my job to get that show on the air and to make sure that that everything happens like it's supposed to. And then I'm going to do this next thing, which is the American Airlines deal. I mean, it's like I segued from one thing to the other.
Wow.
I mean, that was just a hell of a lot of responsibility thrown at me all at once. It was just incredible. Well, to me, it was the greatest challenge of my career, certainly, to do these things. And it was the high point of my career. And everything went downhill after that, as far as I was concerned. How could you compare it? How could you compare it?
Yeah, and then
And it wasn't. Yeah, it was many years until I regained my feet. I mean, it was after I retired. Well, I learned how to be. I made so much money on the Academy Awards, or on the Olympics, that I took flying lessons.
wow.
I mean, it was like flying lessons are not cheap, and so I took flying lessons, and so my airplane suddenly became my next big deal, and so that I eventually owned a couple of airplanes, and some pretty nice ones too.
So
I did a lot of flying all over the United States, Canada, and even Mexico.
The Olympics was 1984, was it? Or what?
1984, yeah. That was the year that the Russians didn't play. The preceding Olympics, Jimmy Carter had decided we wouldn't play in the Russian Olympics. It was a political deal, And so the Russians got even and said, well, we're not going to be in the 84 Olympics. Well, that worked out nice because the Russians were able to beat us in everything, and we didn't. When they weren't in the Olympics, it made a nice Olympics. We won all the events. It was cool.
And you won an Emmy for that production of American Airlines, was it, or was it for the other thing? You won the Emmy.
No, it was for the American Airlines. I'm pretty sure that's what. I don't. I mean, all I know is I was awarded for the Olympics. It was what they call a sports Olympics. I was a sports award.
Well, I think that's a good way to cap it, the interview, and end it on we went all the way from Queen for a Day to Olympics from the last interview, and now and Queen for a Day was actually a nice gig, really. But now when we get to the Olympics, it is a whole nother level. So, wow. Ron Bacon, TV producer from the early days of live television, working. We were listening to his stories for the past couple of hours, and you can see that part 1 is also available on the YouTube channel, Sandner Music, and I'll put a link to part 1 at the bottom of this video, and this will also be posted on Facebook. But videos get lost on Facebook. I think this is going to be preserved.
I'll post it. Yeah, I will see that it's posted on my website, which is ronbacon.net. Just RONBACON.net.
Right. And I have your, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, Ron. Well, it's been great talking with you, and we got a
It's
lot
great
in.
talking to you. I mean, you're a great interviewer. You allow me to talk.
I'm a great interviewer because I just don't say anything. I just let you talk.
Well, that's it. I mean, just stay out of the way, please.
Exactly. And Summer, thank you for being here. Do you want to say hello again, Summer, before we go?
You're welcome. Just quickly, I guess I can lean in.
Yeah.
Hi.
Summer Bacon, that's Ron's daughter, who
Talk a little bit. We're both good at talking.
they both live in Sedona. Is that all you're going to say, Summer? You just okay? You have any final thoughts?
Let's see. I gotta see how I get in the video here.
Plug summerbacon.com.
No, it's a great honor and to be here and to have my dad, being immortalized by you, because he really has done so much in from the ground floor up of television, and the stories are endless, really. Truly, I mean,
I just make them up.
This is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that he experienced. But the beauty is that he's been through the ground floor up through all technology of the television industry, and he's really, he really understands it from every aspect. So he's an icon. He's going to be 91 May 16th.
All right.
And
Congratulations.
Yeah. So. Yes, happy birthday coming up, Daddy.
I got no welts on me right now.
So thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Summer. Thank you, Ron. And I get my little thing with live TV on the internet. I guess is about a little more informal than what you went through.
I really enjoyed doing it, Steve, and I love you so much. You're a great guy.
Love you, Ron. It's been a pleasure to know you over the past 10, 12 years, and hearing your stories and getting to share the stories. It's a privilege to be able to share these stories with the world on the internet with you. So thank you.
I want to interview you. You're the guy.
Oh, well, by the way, I do live shows on my virtual piano bar every Wednesday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can look me up on the internet. You'll find me. So thank you again. And
great shows. Everybody should watch Steve's shows. They're really good. Your opportunity. You're a great artist.
Well, I got some pointers from Ron as I was. Let's see, how do I get on here? There we go.
Be careful you don't get yourself in trouble.
See, now I'm a big shot on live TV. I think I know everything, but not really.
You got control.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ron.
You want me the job of technical directors. You're not aware of that. But.
Well, Ron gave me some pointers, and I try. If I make any mistakes, it's because of me, because I'm a bad student. But Ron gave me the proper pointers to get started in live internet production. So, I especially like the keyboard shot from the end of the keyboard. That was completely your idea. So anyway, enough talking. Thank you, Ron. Love you. Thank you, Summer. We'll see you. Maybe we'll do a part 3. We'll see. We'll see how we feel.
All right. God bless.
God bless. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.